What's going on, guys, and Happy New Year. Congratulations making it to 2024. What I wanted to do in this video was something I've known I wanted to do since the DLC dropped, and that's make a video going over and discussing the strengths, weaknesses, how to play different builds, and all that kind of stuff for the Crusader. He's one of my favorite characters since I've been using him on stream. Since he basically dropped, honestly, I've used the Duelist a little bit, and I plan on tackling her and seeing what she can provide next. But Crusader is much more straightforward and honest than the Duelist, so we'll get into that in a little bit. If you liked the video, please subscribe. Like I said, we're going to do another one on the Duelist, and if you're interested, you can check me out on Twitch, where we do all these crazy shenanigans and different kinds of runs and whatnot. So that'd be really cool if you wanted to do that. I appreciate you checking out the video, and I'm going to play some footage from the Stygian Grand Slam that we completed with the Crusader to kind of show off what our boy Reynold can do when pushed to his absolute limits. So I hope you enjoy that, and I'll catch you on the next video. So starting with just a brief discussion about the Crusader and his character, what he provides. He essentially plays like a generalist hero where you can throw him into any team and he'll have some kind of net positive, benefit to your team. He doesn't really ever feel out of place, especially if you're, building him with that intent. Another one of his strengths is he's pretty flexible in what you want him to do based on the fact that he is a generalist and he can kind of pick up slack wherever he needs to. So you can, take that general baseline and funnel it into a specific strength. So to start with like a specific example, you could always just build him for damage. Smite is a really consistent move. It has 5 to 7 not mastered, which is pretty good. It's it's a strong damage range because you can't really hit that low, but it also doesn't go too terribly high. 5 to 7 is nice, especially when you get something like Promise Kept, which is the memory that increases damage by 10%, because that's just 1 damage on each end, so that brings it to 6 to 8, which is good, and it's very consistent damage. It's reliable, and that's his entire character, and I want you to keep that in mind. He is a very reliable hero. If you want to build him for kind of like a frontline support, you could run Stunning Blow instead, and you don't even need to put a point into Stunning Blow to get the stun when comboed, which is again something very consistent, and kind of leads me into one of his next strengths, which is he is a hero that excels in the early game. You can put points into him and he will get value out of those mastery points, but what he really provides for your team is a strong, consistent Region 1 character. You put Reynold on your team because everyone else really wants mastery, and he doesn't really need it. There are a couple builds where he will want mastery, and I'll get into that later, but as a general overview, if you're just running him in the front and you want someone that's kind of tanky, has access to a heal, taunt, these kinds of things that will pick up slack on your team, he's gonna be your go-to character. He's gonna be who you want in that 1 or 2 rank, depending on what you need. To kind of help illustrate a prettier picture about why Crusader is so strong in Region 1 in the early parts of a run just in general, I'm going to draw a couple comparisons between him and some other moves, other skills on different heroes. So the first thing I want to look at, and this is probably the most interesting case I can point to that kind of really helps paint this picture that he is so strong in the early parts of a run, is Inspiring Cry. And Inspiring Cry is more or less just an unassuming stress heal at first glance. It has 1 turn cooldown, has to be 5 or higher, and heals 2. But Inspiring Cry and Inspiring Tune have a very distinct difference that makes Inspiring Cry a better stress heal when comparing the unmastered versions, that I don't know if a lot of people have noticed, but it can be used anywhere. Inspiring Tune has to be ranked 3 or 4, but Inspiring Cry, even if he gets thrown out of place, out of position, if you're playing Wander and you want to keep him in 1 or 2, you throw him into 3 or 4 on accident, fighting Shambler or what have you, he can still use Cry. He can use Holy Lance. You know, he still has access to support and damage. If he's Banneret, he has a heal with Battle Heal. So he just has this really strong foundation in being an early game asset. And you don't always need Inspiring Cry. Inspiring Cry is a move you're probably always going to put on in the first region, and depending on how you want to spend your points, you could master Inspiring Tune and then just drop Inspiring Cry and start bringing something else. You might want Bulwark, you might want Tenacity, you know what I mean? Like, it'll open up some kind of option. Another huge benefit to bringing Crusader, especially in terms of early regions and whatnot, is actually Battle Heal. Battle Heal is very strong, and as a side note, a great use of a mastery point in most cases, if for no other reason than reducing the cooldown, because you can kind of use that to make stalling the ends of battles a little bit more efficient, so you can get better healing out of it. But even just looking at the unmastered version, the 3 uses isn't super relevant. In my opinion, you're very rarely ever going to use all 3 of them, and if you do, 3 is normally about where you're going to use anyway. The cooldown too is a little, it's not great, you know, but being under 50% is not a huge ask at all, and makes stalling, it makes keeping your team that much healthier for sure. And 20% is a solid heal. 20% is nothing to scoff at. And if we compare it to, say, Battlefield Medicine, now obviously it doesn't have the dot cure, but 20%, it's the same. Battlefield Medicine doesn't have a cooldown, which, you know, it has the 3 uses, and you can burn through those pretty quick because, you know, you probably want to be using it to also remove dots and whatnot. But, you know, they're not too dissimilar. They both have 3 uses. Battle Heal has a 2-turn cooldown, but since he has so many different things he could be doing, he's never really like hurting for something to do. If you find an opportunity to use Battle Heal, go ahead and use it, and if you ever want to, you're probably going to put a point into it, because I mean, it's just a really good mastery point investment. So Battle Heal is good. It's one of the biggest reasons why Crusader is so strong in filling in gaps and holes in your team. It allows him to provide even more healing. He has, you know, stress healing. He has strong on hit damage. He has dots. He has multiple cleaves. He can give block. He can clear stun. You know, just looking at his paths and seeing the kind of versatility he has just lends himself so well into a Region 1 character, because his strengths just come from how well designed his base kit is and how that fits into just about any team. He can even be rank 4, he can be rank 1, you know, it just depends on how you build him and what your team needs, what kind of areas he should be compensating in. This is one of the reasons why he's so strong in things like Grand Slam teams or just staple team comps in general. He never really feels out of place or is hurting for something to do on any other turn. Crusader to me is a hero you're not normally going to build around. And while of course you can, and he does have some pretty interesting and fun things he can do, Crusader normally is a character that you might be looking at in your team building process, and you already have 2 characters that you want to build around, say Flagellant and Plague Doctor, and you're kind of just looking for the next couple characters to maybe help fill out your ranks and give you access to things that you might not have access to. Or even better, you have 3 people, but you're not exactly sure what you want the 4th one to be. And if you have a character that can function well in 1 or 2, you're probably looking at Crusader. If you really, really want to, Crusader does function really well as a backline hero depending on what you need. So, kind of going into the how to play aspect of this hero, he's pretty straightforward. When you're going into a region, you want to look at what your team might be lacking or what there is a lot of on the enemy team, and taking the Crusader in with the intention of having him be more of a reactionary character most of the time than a proactive. The way I look at it is, depending on what you're going into, say you're going into the Tangle. The Tangle does have a pretty decent amount of stress damage, but he's also really good at pinging off block tokens on the front rank enemies. Say you have a couple foot soldiers, or even if you're in a cultist fight fighting the evangelist, something like Zealous Accusation to ping some of those tokens and get some dot damage on them to kind of help keep the tempo up in the fight is really strong for a proactive aspect of the character. But since you're also dealing with a lot of high base damage and stress, you're definitely going to want, Inspiring Cry and Battle Heal on just to keep your team healthy, so the rest of your members can focus on burning down the back line or dealing with certain problematic elements, so on and so forth. If you are applying a lot of combo, you can definitely make use of Crusader's slower speed to set up a stun with stunning tap, since you don't even need any mastery point to get the stun on combo with that, which is a really nice strength, and in my opinion kind of pushes Stunning Blow into contestant for best stun in the game just off that alone. You can only hit the front 2 ranks, but it does allow you to do a decent amount of damage and potentially get a stun, which is really nice in this game because there's not a lot of stuns. It's pretty difficult to get stuns, so him having a strong one is really nice and helps bring him forward to separate himself from the rest of the heroes. If you are looking to build a team around Crusader, well, this is something you can definitely do. I don't feel like this is where he is at his strongest, but he does have access to a lot of really interesting and fun different ways to play the game. And the first thing I want to talk about is when you're building around Crusader, you really want him to pick up his, more unique abilities like Radiance or Tenacity, and not have him take up a couple move slots with Inspiring Cry or Battle Heal. While you probably do want Battle Heal on just because it is a nice, oh shit kind of button, you are more likely looking into something like Aggressor to build around, which you are going to want Smite, you're going to want Reap, you're going to want Tenacity, and you're going to want Radiance. So you're essentially kind of playing with these strong tools for sure, and he is the driving force of your team in terms of damage. You are going to have to be a little bit more cautious when picking your other team members. A hero like Bonnie synergizes really well with Crusader for a couple obvious reasons. One, they're the only burn characters in the game. 2, Smokescreen is a really nice ability if you're playing, say, Wanderer to set up a really big smite because of the Vuln and the combo, so it's giving him like a plus 100% damage, which is really nice. And she also has just a strong amount of movement to help keep the Crusader where he needs to be. And while Reynauld does have Holy Lance to keep him up in the front, depending on how you're playing him, you might not always have that availability. A character like Jester is really nice because he can pick up the stress healing for Crusader, especially once you put a point into an Inspiring Tune. You really don't need Inspiring Cry after that because the stress healing is just so strong. He applies combo for Ray, which is also really nice, and Battle Ballad, keeping him in the front, giving him strength, all very nice things. And it does allow, a lot of movement synergy within the team if you are running Crusader, Bonnie, and Jester, so you never really feel like you're super out of place or anything like that. Even if he does get shuffled to the back, you can just pop Radiance and then have the other characters get him to the front, so you're really not tripping over anything or wasting any actions. He does have, some setup if you choose to use it. The way Templar was handled is very interesting to me. Before Crusader was added, and outside of Bounty Hunter, Vestal and Man-at-Arms were the only 2 heroes that had guard moves, being Sanctuary and Defender, and Rallying Cry becoming a guard move on Templar, and the way that it's used, the way it's implemented, is very different and pretty unique. It doesn't give the Crusader himself block tokens when he uses it. It does, however, give the target healing received. This makes me believe that it would be a lot better to pair him with another guard hero to kind of help out and assist in what he's doing. The Crusader himself will be able to, guard somebody and then use his own battle heal to kind of bring them back up when they're like super low. And you can have other heroes support that or facilitate that kind of playstyle with things like taunt. So what I would recommend personally for a team that wants to make the most use out of Templar is you more than likely want Templar Crusader, of course, Flagellant, Dismiss, and Vestal. And while I've only played a couple runs with Templar, I feel like this gives you a really good amount of options to help the team out. The reason we add Dismiss is for the range damage, and he's a good target to receive things like Guard because he is kind of squishy himself. So helping him just kind of not worry about getting negative tokens on him, not worrying about falling to death's door, getting weakened, these kind of things help a lot, especially using something like a preemptive guard on him. If he is under 33% health and you use Rallying Cry, it'll actually give the regeneration that's on Crusader to the target. And this is why we have Vestal and Flagellant being the two heroes that can actually give regeneration, outside of Bonnie, who can only give herself regeneration. Undying being the best source of regeneration, and Divine Comfort just being a nice quality of life skill almost that kind of helps keep your whole team healthy and helps them focus on other things. Since your Templar Crusader, if he doesn't have to worry about guarding people, he can just throw out a couple smites or maybe even stunning blows, and Zealous, depending on what you need, he can kind of pick up the slack there. And Tenacity becoming a nice self-buffing move where he just gives himself a couple block tokens and some healing received, and if you master it, he does get some debuff res, which is really nice. The Crusader's last path is a pretty interesting one to me, because from what I could tell, especially in early community discussions, it seems to be a lot of people's preferred Crusader path. And while it is really interesting, you can stick Crusader in 4, and you can kind of just stay there. It's not super efficient, so I wouldn't recommend it. It's definitely an option, and depending on the situation you're in, you can definitely make pretty good use of it. But the real appeal of Banneret to me is the rank flexibility. Being able to just have him anywhere on the team and still have access to his battle heal, which becomes a move he can use from any rank. It gets an extra use, but it doesn't heal him anymore. And since he might be in the back a little bit more often, you can kind of assume he wouldn't be getting hit as much. And the biggest appeal, in my opinion, is Tenacity. Tenacity giving your entire team a block token, and when mastered, it clears stun or daze, which is really nice, especially if you're using Encore a lot, or Finale and things like that, that pirouette that will daze your own heroes. And also when mastered, it reduces the cooldown, so you can keep block on your entire team, which is pretty nice, especially in road battles and whatnot. Starting the fight with block on everybody definitely helps mitigate the damage that they're taking. Zealous Accusation doesn't really change necessarily, just where you can use it from and where it hits, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if we've had this on any other path where it just changes the ranks that it can be used on and the ranks that it hits, but it does allow him to stay in the back if you don't want him to move forward and still provide a little bit of damage. The only issue with Zealous Accusation is it has a pretty decent amount of overlap with Holy Lance, because Holy Lance hitting 2, 3, and 4 and Zealous hitting 3 and 4, and they're both range attacks that do burn. There's a pretty decent amount of overlap there, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend running both of them, in my opinion, but it is a nice option to have. And a quick shout out to Rallying Cry, because on Banneret it's actually a pretty interesting move, and I like how unique it is. The entire idea is that it puts your entire party in the immobilized status, or gives them all an immobilized token, I guess you would say. And it's pretty nice. You can use it to counter things like Categorize and Centaurious Lament, or keep your characters in the spots that they're in to spam moves like Lunge or Point Blank Shot, things like that. Pretty nice move, pretty unique. I like that a lot. Just a couple closing thoughts, I guess you would say, about the Crusader. And honestly, there's not anything to say besides he's an incredibly well-balanced hero. His base kit is super well put together. His paths, while they aren't the craziest, I think it kind of helps reinforce the idea behind the Crusader having this generalist idea behind him. Like, all of his paths provide a lot of unique traits, but they never go too far away from what he is. And, you know, I think the best example of that is probably Banneret, where it just gives him rank flexibility, which is really nice. But Templar is essentially Crusader with a guard. You know, it doesn't really change all that much. It does give him a little bit more self-sustained in terms of handling his own stress and whatnot, but, you know, that kind of goes with being hit more, so I think they wanted to give him something to handle all of that stress with. And Aggressor is just, you know, more of a DPS-oriented Crusader. I don't really think it's something that's wrong with the hero at all. I think it's actually something that lends himself to being a very well-balanced hero, and I like that a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video, especially if you made it to this point. If you did, thank you so much. I really enjoy putting these videos together, especially the more balance-oriented or, like, you know, just information that I know about the Crusader or, you know, hero we're talking about, to kind of see how I can help the community and give back in my own way. If you did enjoy the video, I'd really appreciate you leaving a like, but I also would love for you to leave a comment, because I really enjoy going through the comments and seeing what you guys have to say about specific balance points or experiences you've had with the heroes. So if you do, I really appreciate it, and I'll make sure to get to your comment. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, because we'll definitely be doing more of these, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy, guys.